Are we there?
Yep, I can hear you.
You see my screen?
I can see your screen. I can. And do you see the button for recording?
Yes, I already clicked it.
Oh, no
It's
wonder I couldn't
recording
find it.
right now. Yeah, it's recording right now.
All right. No problem. Well, Matt, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. I want to
Hmm.
echo Anne-Marie's sentiments and thank everyone for being here today. We should last about 45 minutes, and hopefully after that time that you will have a better understanding of the new content that we've added to ToxPlanet and what it can do for you. You want to take it from here, Anne-Marie?
I mean, you can go ahead and take it from here. I'm sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
You can take the agenda from here.
Okay. So let's start with the agenda. It's not as onerous as it looks, but I'll be describing who ToxPlanet is. I'll give you a little bit of background as to why we've come about adding these collections. And then there are about 7 different types of collections, or I've actually gathered the collections into categories that, while not exactly accurate, probably describe the type of content found in those. So it would be global.
Hey, Matt, can you go ahead and advance your slides to the agenda page?
I'm on the agenda page. You don't see it?
No. I wonder if there's just a delay. If you hover to the bottom left, it should let you advance. There we go.
But you see it now?
Yep, I do.
Okay,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
So we'll start all over again. So there's roughly 7 different types of collections that we have in our system, or that we've added recently. As I said, these are broad categories, but are good descriptions of the type of information that can be found in those collections. So it would be globally harmonized system content. We've added some reproductive toxicology. We've added some pesticide and biocide databases under agricultural chemicals. We've added a handful of drug and pharmaceutical chemical databases. Of course, a hot topic these days is endocrine disruptors, and we've found some of that information. And then we continue to add hazard and risk assessment information, as well as safety assessments. We've also got a new set of property or descriptor databases. These are databases that provide environmental properties or chemical and physical properties, or even maybe occupational exposure limits or tox values. And then the last category would be curated content. And that's a bit of a global description, but that's more along the lines of collections like PubChem or the EPA's chemistry dashboard. Then there's actually a handful of miscellaneous databases that really didn't fit under any of those categories. And then we'll talk about our key takeaways, and we'll open up the floor for questions. So who is ToxPlanet? We have a combination of users and non-users on the call, so I thought I'd give a little background about ToxPlanet. We're currently located just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. We were founded in 2003 as Expert Publishing. In 2010, we sold Expert Publishing to EBSCO. And then in 2015, EBSCO called me back and asked me if I wanted to buy XPub. And so I did, and then renamed it ToxPlanet, which is, I think at this point, is a better global name. Since inceptions, we serve what I would call chemical safety professionals, or people that are concerned about the impact of chemicals on the workplace, the humans, and the environment. And so, of course, that includes toxicologists, pharmacologists, hygienists, product steward, risk assessors, and a slew of other professions. We're in the chemical hazard and toxicology literature information business. Everything we do, or virtually everything we do, is full text. So although we have some abstract and indexing information, some bibliographic content, the vast majority of what we include is full text content. And the value proposition we bring is that we save people a lot of time and money by making information easily found. Searching our system is akin to searching 500 different websites simultaneously using a normalized index. And because of our expert index, we like to think that we provide you what we call 100% relevant search results. And by that, I mean in our system, when you do a search on benzene, you're going to get a document about benzene, not simply a document that contains the word benzene. And we deliver content users expect to find, and then we delight users with content they did not know existed. We are often told, particularly for example, at the Society of Toxicology meeting, people will come up and tell us that they really like our system, but what they like most about it is perhaps the discovery part of it, or discovering that there's content on a compound that they did not know existed. Here's a little information about me, but I got into the information business purely by accident in 2002. In 1982. In 1990, I joined Thomson Micromedics and entered the toxicology, drug, chemical hazard information world, and have been there ever since. In 2003, I founded XPub when I saw the opportunity to take advantage of the explosion of content on the internet. While all of a sudden there was an explosion of content out there, there was also a corresponding increase in the explosion of noise and bad content that was out there. So creating the system that we did allowed our users to find the content they're looking for. And our long-held belief has always been that scientists should spend their time using content, not looking for it. Give you some background on the call today. Historically, going back to inception, we are adamant about hosting content. And back then, the notion of persistent URLs or persistent links was in the nascent stages, and you really couldn't rely on linking to someone else's website. So we endeavored to make sure that everything we displayed in our product was content that we hosted on our servers. We maintained that approach until last March, when we decided to start adding what we call external content. And there were two big reasons for this change. We publish content that we license, that is in the public domain, or is free to use for commercial purposes. There remains what I would call unlicensable content. I don't necessarily know if unlicensable is a word, but I think it describes it properly. And that's content that we cannot, for whatever reason, get permission to republish. And so that would include content where the owners are just absolutely unwilling to license the content, or the financial terms are onerous. The second would be organizations that don't necessarily care about distributing their content, or unresponsive to questions, or don't necessarily have a framework in place to license their content. And the third would be people like ECA, who are unwilling to license the content because they believe they do not own the content, and consequently they can't license it. And that's why you see the implementation of the REACH registrations, or the dossiers, or the CNL inventory is links to their content, because they're unwilling to license it to us. The second thing that's changed since 2003 is that links on the internet are much more persistent. People are real conscious of creating websites that have persistent links and that are intended to link with other partners. And so we feel much more comfortable about using links as part of our content. One of the requirements, though, that we had when adding links to our content is to make it look and behave as if we were hosting the content. So when you click on the link to an external document, it'll take you directly to the document. It's not going to take you to another website's homepage or search page or search results or anything like that. It will take you directly to the document as if it were in our own collection. And then finally, people ask how we decide to include content. Early on, it was easy. I can say that it was probably our decision. There were about 30 databases that were out there, and the market pretty much knew what they were. But ever since then, I would say that 90 or 95% of the content that we've added to our system has been from user recommendations. And so we continue to rely on our users. And if you happen to have, at the end of this presentation, or even months from now, if you happen to run across content that you'd like added to the system, just let us know about it and we'll see what we can do. As I mentioned, we'll move into GHS. As I mentioned, try to group this content, or these collections, into groupings. And so what we have here is 6 collections that are really GHS oriented. And the first would be the Chemical Classification and Information Database, which is produced by the New Zealand Environmental Protection Agency. It contains roughly 6,000 chemicals, and it has a classification system that's very similar to the UN GHS system. As we all know, GHS is a self labeling or categorization process, and so our users have told us it's much better to go out and find someone else that's already done the work rather than recreate the wheel, and that's what these databases will do for you. The second one we have is the classification label inventory from ECA. I've lost track of how many records it is, but at this point it's something on the order of 120,000 different documents. The third one is the Justice database from Germany. For the life of me, I can't remember the name, nor could I pronounce the name of the agency, but it has GHS classification and labeling information according to CLP regulations, and has something on the order of 9,400 different substances. We also have the GHS information from Japan. PubChem has, if y'all are familiar with PubChem, PubChem has created a subset of GHS classifications. And what they've done is they've gathered the GHS classifications from 6 other sources and put them all in one place. There's somewhere around 4,500 different GHS classifications in their collection. And then we've also added the WMIS database from Canada. The next set of content that we've added would be reproductive toxicology. These are all collections that live right now under the Repro Expert product banner. And the first would be, the first 3 are actually from the FDA. We have microbial mutagenesis testing reports, mutagenicity evaluations, and teratologic evaluations. These are all studies that were commissioned by the FDA in the 70s going into the early 80s. There's roughly, I'd say, 400 or 500 different documents collectively in those collections. And this is content that you cannot find on the FDA website or anywhere else. We source this content from a different source. We've also added the WMIS system program on safe motherhood, which is a look at WMIS information from a woman's or a mother's perspective. The next one is, the global name I've used is agricultural chemical, but it might be more pesticides or biocides. We've added AgriTox, which is a database from France. It's a French database from their National Institute for Agricultural Research. It has chemical and physical properties, ecotox data, environmental fate, behavior, things like that on chemicals. The compendium of pesticides common names does not necessarily have much chemical information, but it does have quite a bit of identification information, UPAC name, CAS number, INCHI information, things like that. The next 3 databases came from the University of Hertfordshire. And again, it's a biopesticide database, a pesticide database, and a veterinary database. These are databases that contain information on chemical identity, chemical and physical properties, human health, ecotox data, and more things along those lines. Drugs and pharmaceuticals. Of course, most drugs or pharmaceuticals are chemicals, and so we have quite a bit of information on those compounds in other databases like HSDB and Artex. But these are databases that are drug specific, and so the first one would be Drug Bank, which contains information on about 8,000 different chemicals, drugs, which would include some experimental drugs, some nutraceuticals, and some other things. This is provided by, I wish I had it at my fingertips, but I believe it's a Canadian university up in Manitoba. We've also added Drug Central, which comes from the University of New Mexico. And this is information on drug approvals from FDA and EMA and several other organizations. And they even include discontinued drugs. LACMed contains, which is from National Library of Medicine, contains information and other chemicals that affect breastfeeding mothers. And the last one, so the first three can be found in Drug Expert. The last one is actually part of Chem Expert, but it's pharmaceuticals in the environment. As we all know, that there's an increasing concern about pharmaceuticals working their way into the environment, but there doesn't seem to be much information on it. And this particular database has been able to compile a great portion of information and is produced by the National Centers for Coastal Ocean Science. Of course, the hot topic is endocrine disruptors. So we've recently added the EPA's screening program documents. We also added the Silent Spring Mammary Carcinogens Review Database. I realize that this isn't necessarily endocrine disruptors, but because of its connection with Silent Spring, I figured it probably fits well under here. And then we've actually, beyond just providing the list of the TEDx list, we've actually linked back to their documents or bibliographic information on each of their particular compounds. As far as hazard and risk assessments, we've added Australian government's IMAP assessments and their priority existing chemical assessments. And this is a good example of actually needing to link to external sources. Australia is a government that maintains and claims ownership, copyright to their materials, and you have to license content from them if you want to republish it. But it's perfectly legal to link to that content, and that's what we've done. This BGRCI is toxicology evaluations, about 250 of them for industrial chemicals, and this is produced by one of the German environmental agencies. We've added the ECHA risk. Let me look at it right here. It'd be the risk management option analysis documents, and these are actually an informal hazard assessment of persistent pollutants. We've added the HERA risk assessments. HERA is a European organization of human and environmental risk assessment, and this is a collection of information on ingredients of household cleaning products used in Europe. Now, in the past, people used to ask us or say things like, yeah, your collection is too American, or why don't you add European content? But the reality is that whether the database is published in the US or the database is published in Europe, the ingredients and the chemicals themselves are commonly used on both sides of the pond, and so it's relevant to us, although it may be labeled as a European collection. And finally, we have the ETER database, which is published by the Toxicology Excellence for Risk Assessment, or TERA. And what they've done is they've compiled human health risk values and cancer classifications for over 680 chemicals and put it all in one place in a nice and easy to use package. We've also added some safety assessments. Safety assessments are one of those hard things to find, to publish in our system. The organizations that publish those do not license our content. We've tried to get that content licensed, and so that they will not ever let us get our hands on it. And so what we've done here is, in the case of the Flavor and Extract Manufacturers Association, is actually linked to their documents. And so we're linking to the GRAS flavoring substances and to their safety assessments. And again, this is to their website. And then we've added from FDA, we discovered along the line of those other FDA documents, we found scientific literature reviews on GRAS. And those, again, are documents that go back into the 70s and 80s and are not available on the FDA website. We've added about 8 databases that have properties and descriptors. The chemical entities database is from Europe. It's a dictionary of molecular entities focused on small chemical compounds. It has a lot of isotopic information, molecules, ions, and things like that. Maybe a little beyond toxicology, but something that probably fits in our collection very well. We've added the collaborative on health and environment, toxicant and disease databases. This is a database that links exposures to chemicals to diseases. The CPCAT database is from the EPA. And what they've done, this is a nice large collection that has roughly 43,000 different chemicals in it. And it's a great database to identify usage or function of chemicals. So they in turn have aggregated a number of different databases and put it all into one place so you can look up a compound and see where it's regulated and what its use or function is in the various industries. The next database, the EAWAG biocatalysis biodegradation database, contains information on chemical compounds, its environmental information on biodegradation and microbial reactions. We also included the NIST chemistry webbook. This is primarily chemical and physical property made available by NIST. The new, I say new, it was probably launched about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, is the OSHA Occupational and Chemical Database. What OSHA has done is they've compiled exposure limits and reference doses and chemical and physical properties and RELs and other types of endpoints that is typically the kind of information someone worried about occupational exposure to chemicals would want to have. Last in this category would be the toxin and targets database, and it contains information on about 3,800 different toxins. It includes toxin targets, chemical properties, toxicity values, molecular and cellular properties, and medical information.
Hey, Matt, I just want to check in. I had some connectivity issues, and I just don't know. Did you experience that on your end?
No. I hope everyone's been able to hear me.
Then it probably was just me, and you're the one leading it, so it should be fine. Please continue.
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption.
We've also added what I call curated content, and these are large collections that are available somewhere else. And I think a good example would be the PubChem compound database. PubChem is really two different databases, which is the compound database, which are unique substances or unique compounds. And then there is what they call the substance database, which allows external parties to submit records for chemicals. And maybe a good example, or maybe a way to illustrate what they've done is the PubChem compound is a singular record created by the PubChem folks. And then the substance database are documents, say, akin to MSDSs that different manufacturers have submitted. So there will be one compound document on benzene, and there could be 50 or 80 or 100 substance documents on benzene because of the external contributors. So what we've done is we've only grabbed the PubChem compound records and included them in our system. PubChem has, I've lost track, but it's over 100 million records in it. And what we've done to integrate it is there are about 370,000 different CAS numbers in our index. And generally speaking, though it's not totally accurate, but generally speaking, those 370,000 CAS numbers are for substances that are either on a regulatory list or have some kind of toxicology or safety information available. And so instead of trying to link to all 100 million documents in PubChem, what we've done is we've linked to the 370,000 chemicals that we know exist in our system. The same thing would apply to the EPA's chemistry dashboard. That's the dashboard that's coming out of Research Triangle Park, and it's an aggregation. They're doing a really good job of aggregating EPA databases and then adding some external content. they have something around 700,000 unique chemicals in their system, but we're linking to the 370,000 that we have in ours. And then the last one is the CTD, which is a database that addresses the issue of environmental exposures and human health. And it's curated information. So like the other databases, they rely on information from other parties. The last category is miscellaneous, the all-encompassing miscellaneous. There's a handful of collections that we've added that don't necessarily fall into any of the other categories that I created. Acute Tox Database is a database of about 100 chemicals and reference chemicals. And what the creators have done is create a collection of in vitro and in vivo data on reference chemicals and trying to create one place that has all that information. The ChemSec substituted now list is, so there's a list. This ChemSec is an NGO who's publishing and pushing for, advocating for using safer chemicals in consumer products. And so they created their list some time ago, and hopefully with the intent of having manufacturers discontinue the use of those products. They've now created fact sheets or documents on each of their chemicals that explain the rationale for why they want those chemicals substituted. And so that information is available in that database. The OECD has created, it has an existing chemicals database. This is the collection of documents and monographs submitted by the various state and countries on chemicals that they're trying to eliminate or reduce the use of. The same thing would apply to the next database, which is information about this is more environmental, or water is trying to find and reduce the sources of chemicals that are introduced into the water. The MAC collection is more of an occupational industrial hygiene product, but it's really the MACs themselves are the occupational exposure limits. And then this particular collection contains the supporting documentation for the creation of those occupational exposure limits. And the last one is we discovered in the same sources that FDA source some technical reports and monographs published by the Consumer Product Safety Commission back in the 70s and 80s. And so we've added that to our product as well. So if you are like most of our users, well, let me back up. We now have over 250 collections and several million documents in our system. And so earlier I talked about the web maybe having some noise in content, and maybe the way our content is growing, we're starting to experience maybe a little bit of that in our system as well. And so if you're like most users have content that they use all of the time. They have some content that they use some of the time, and then they have content that they never use. I wanted to take this time to show you our My Expert product, which allows you to personalize your view and perhaps create your own subscription within your subscription, so that, for example, if you're working on a GHS project, you can put all the GHS documents or collections in one place. Or if you always have your go-to collections, you can put those in that same place as well. So we'll step into the ToxPlanet system and do a real simple search on phenol. So I happen to know the CAS number on it, and so we would do a search on the CAS number, submit. Because we have an exact match, it's going to bring us back directly to the chemical identity page. And as you can see, all the tabs are lit up, which means there's content under all of these tabs. And if I were to go to Chem Expert, you can see that I have 174 documents on this compound. I may need to use 10 or 15 of those documents. I don't necessarily need to use all 174. And for that, we have what we call our My Expert, which again is a personalization or a way for you to create your own subscription. And the way to set it, I won't show you how to set it up. We can let us know, or we'll be creating a video that shows you how to set it up. But assuming that you set it up, and again, it's really easy to set it up. You would go to My Expert. I already have it set up, and by set up, I mean it's recognizing me as a subscriber. These are all the databases that are available in the system. And so using the example of GHS, let's say I want to create a GHS grouping. And so I'm just going to mark up all the different collections that I want displayed all at one time. Here we go. The Justice and GHS Japan. I want to see ITER because I want to see those. And I want to add WMIS. And then I want to add the CNL inventory. I want to see that every time. And let's just say I want to see the reach registrations that. So I've created a subscription now within my subscription, and I'll save the settings. And I'll go back and do a search. I can use this tab here, this button here, and search again on that same compound. We have the same results, but now I can go over to My Expert. Got My Expert set up. And now all I'm seeing are the results that I created. So I can see the CNL inventory. I can see all the different databases that I have in ChemExpert. And I can even see the reach registrations. And at this point, I can go see any of those documents. And so, for example, I'll go to the New Zealand database. I'll click on phenol. And the reason you saw 3 different entries there is because the CCID database has 3 different documents. And here we are. Now we are, the navigation has taken us directly to the end document that we're looking for, which is the document on phenol. And here is the CCID information on it. Likewise, if I wanted to go see classification and labeling, again, there seems to be 2 different documents in the CNL inventory. We'll go there. And now here's the CNL document on that particular chemical.
Hey, Matt, I know we're saving questions to the end, but one came through for right now. She asked, she didn't catch it. Can you have multiple of My Expert profiles?
That's a good question. The answer is no. At this point, you can only have one profile, but we've been asked to be able to provide more than one, so we'll be working on that, but there's no ETA on that right now. So that was just a quick and dirty on My Expert. We can help you set it up, or Judy can help you set it up and get you up and running. So at this point, just some key takeaways. We want you to know that we're always adding valuable new content. It's an ongoing thing, and we have quite a few more collections in the queue as we speak. And the content is seamlessly integrated, so despite the fact that it lives on someone else's server, you'll never really know the difference from a performance perspective. The chances are we can probably add the content that you want. So if you're aware of a collection or content that needs to be included in our system and it's not there, please let us know and we'll do our best to add it. And then My Expert, I realize that was real brief, but it's a great tool to make an efficient product even that much more efficient. So for those of you on the call, oh, sorry. Let's do questions, right?
Question, and I think it relates to this. Okay. As you mentioned in the beginning, we have yeah, it's a question. ToxPlanet clients and people who are considering ToxPlanet. So one of the questions was, are all these collections included in my subscription now, or is there an additional investment?
Good question. All of the collections that are added to a product are no additional charge to that product. So all the collections that we've added for ChemExpert are
So
included in ChemExpert.
if you have a certain product and you've added to it, you get it. But if you don't happen to have that product, it would be an additional investment.
Exactly. But it wouldn't be for those particular databases. It'd be for the product in its entirety.
Okay.
So
We have one more question.
okay.
Go ahead.
So I was going to say that, for example, those 4 collections that we added to Repro Expert would get those collections as part of their subscription. If a non-Repro Expert subscriber wanted them, they would have to subscribe to Repro Expert.
Perfect, thank you. Another question comes to us from David. Does the system recognize an individual MyExpert even if the subscription is company-based?
Yes, when you register your MyExpert, it'll ask you for your email. And I promise you, we don't do anything with that email. We're not going to mail you anything or sell you anything. It's to be able to uniquely identify you. And so when you register, it'll ask for your email, and then it'll put a cookie on your machine. And then at that point, whenever you log in from your machine, it'll recognize you. If you happen to log in on a colleague's machine or in a machine on the road or something, you can retrieve your settings and use the MyExpert that way.
I'm typing the responses as well. Let's see. I think that's all the questions that we have right now.
Okay.
Anybody else have some? We're watching vibrantly, so now's your chance. I think while we give people a chance to ask their questions, maybe we can describe how the special offer from ToxPlanet can help people who are considering either new products or ToxPlanet in general.
Great. So for people on the call who are non-subscribers, we offer a 15-day trial of our products. So it'll be as if you are a customer, so you'd have access to all the databases and all the functionality and all the updates and anything else that a subscriber would have. If you're an existing subscriber and you're interested in perhaps looking at Repro Expert or Drug Expert or one of the other collections that you don't subscribe, let us know and we'll let you have a free trial on those products as well.
Great. Another question came through. Is the documentation for ACGIH TLVs not licensable?
That's a good question. We've tried to license that content before, but must admit I haven't tried in several years. But it is something that we can license. We just need to make sure that we go after it. Is that something that you'd like to have? I guess you can answer answer my question. But yes,
yes, he would like that.
Okay. So the AIHC show is coming up, and that's probably a good time to talk to those people and see if we can circle back and get that content included in our system. And they probably have additional content that would be a good fit. So thanks for bringing that up, and I'll put it on my to-do list.
That sounds great. So I think the other opportunity, what about somebody who's a current subscriber but doesn't subscribe to the Repro product? Can they use the free trial to explore that product?
Oh, absolutely. It's just a matter of letting us know that they want to take a look at it, and we'll turn it on for them. All of our customers actually deal directly with Judy Martin, and so just ping her and let her know that you want to take a look at those other products, and we'd be more glad to help you.
Well, this was a nicely engaged group of people, and we had a lot of people turn out for this, so I think it's fantastic. We have another question from Seneca. Is there a time or time delay, excuse me, between when documents become available on an external site like the EPA or the FDA, and when are they indexed on ToxPlanet?
So let's take it from two different. Let me answer that two different ways. So if a document that's in our system and exists in our system is updated on the EPA website, it's instantly updated because you're accessing the latest document that's available on the website. We are if this makes sense, we are indexing the link to that document, not necessarily the document. So if the document changes, it'll still be included. The second part of that is, what happens or what do we do when new documents are added to that collection that we don't know about? And the answer to that is that we monitor about 500 different websites on a daily basis. So these, if a new document were to be added to the EPA website or to something else, then we would be aware of it. We'd find out about it, and probably within 72 hours, make sure that document's added to our system.
All right, so now we have a question from Mary. I love all the questions from everybody. I know many of the green screens are available for purchase through a store, but I was wondering if you would be able to somehow access a summary or just some benchmark values.
That's a good question, Mary. I've actually had some conversations with the green screen folks. Those green screens, the people that create those green screens, they sell those for anywhere from, as you probably know, anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 to $3,000 a piece, and so they're not real interested in letting us sell those documents for much less than that. So we're unable to license that content. But there are some initiatives going on with Clean Production Action that they're creating some documents that are in the public domain, or will be, and we'll certainly look at adding that information. As far as the specific endpoints, the latter part of that question is, if you can send me or Judy a source or a direction to go looking for that information, we can certainly look at adding those.
All right, I think that's everything. So for those of you, if a question, oh sure.
There's one more page on there, and I've actually in the PDF that you'll get, or the presentation that you'll get from Anne Marie, is I've actually added links to all the collections that we have in our system, and then links to describing the collections that we've added in the last 9 months to our collections.
Okay, that's great, and I'll make sure that's called out in the email as well. The last follow-up question from Mary, as it relates to the green screen question earlier. She said she was thinking of Pharaoh's project as a possibility, perhaps able to link to the green screen list translator.
Yeah, that's a good question, Mary. We can talk about it offline. I've looked at it, and I think we can do it, but I think we also have the opportunity to create our own list translator within ToxPlanet using the list that we have. So we're actually looking at both options right now. But I'd love to talk to you about that and figure out what the best approach would be.
Okay, that was Mary Berto, and she says thanks. That sounds great. Well, I think we could probably wrap this up, and if anybody does think of a question afterwards, go ahead and you can send your question to sales@toxplanet.com, or you can reply to the email that we send out with your recording tomorrow. But I want to thank you guys all for your really engaged attention to this. It sounds like everybody's really interested, and this could be real helpful for a lot of people online.
Great. I'd like to reiterate and say thank you very much for your time and paying attention today, and hopefully you've learned something valuable.
I'm sure they did. Okay, bye everybody.
Great, thank you.